My husband swore my wedding ring was a one-of-a-kind testament to our love, so why was an identical version sparkling on another woman's hand at our dinner table? The scent of rosemary and garlic chicken, the one Mark always called my masterpiece, filled our small, perfect home. It was the scent of a Tuesday night, of a decade of comfortable love. 10 years. In 2 weeks, Mark and I would be celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary. 10 years of inside jokes, shared dreams, and the easy rhythm of two people who knew each other's souls. Or so I thought. He still left little notes in my lunch bag, and I still made his coffee exactly how he liked it, with 1.5 sugars and a splash of oat milk. We were solid. We were forever. That's why I didn't think anything of it when he'd called me that afternoon from the office. "Hey, honey," he'd said, his voice a little strained. "Crazy idea, but would you be mad if I brought a colleague home for dinner? We're crunching on the new Peterson account, and she's been an absolute lifesaver. I kind of owe her." I'd swirled the wine in my glass, smiling. "Of course not, Mark. There's plenty. What's her name?" There was a brief pause. "Chloe. She's an acquaintance from the strategy department, new to the team." The word acquaintance felt odd, stiff, not the usual work wife or buddy from marketing he usually used, but I chalked it up to stress. The Peterson account was a monster, and he'd been working late for weeks. "Well, tell Chloe I look forward to meeting her," I'd chirped, already mentally adding another place setting to the table. I wanted to be the supportive wife, the cool wife, the wife who understood the demands of his career, so I put on my favorite navy blue dress, the one he said made my eyes look like the ocean. I touched up my makeup, and as I checked my reflection in the hall mirror, my hand instinctively went to the ring on my finger, my wedding ring. It wasn't just a ring, it was a story. Mark had designed it himself. He'd spent months with a bespoke jeweler sketching and refining it. It was a delicate band of white gold twisted like a vine with tiny diamond-studded leaves. The main stone wasn't a massive rock, but a modest, brilliant-cut diamond held in a setting that he'd drawn on a napkin for me one night. He'd called the twisting vines, our lives intertwining, and the tiny leaves, the little moments of joy that spring from our love. He'd even had a tiny, almost invisible sapphire set on the inside of the band, a secret just for us. "To match your eyes when you look at me," he'd whispered when he slipped it on my finger. It was one of a kind, a universe of our love, forged in metal and stone. The doorbell rang at 7 on the dot. I took a deep, calming breath, smoothed down my dress, and opened the door with a bright smile. Mark stood there, looking tired but handsome in his suit, and next to him was Chloe. She was stunning. Not in a flashy way, but in a quiet, confident way. She had sleek, dark hair pulled into a low ponytail, sharp, intelligent eyes, and a smile that was perfectly polite. She was wearing a tailored blazer and trousers that probably cost more than my entire outfit. She extended a hand, her handshake firm and cool. "It's so lovely to finally meet you," Chloe said, her voice smooth as silk. "Mark talks about you all the time." My smile felt a little more genuine. "All good things, I hope. Please come in. Dinner's almost ready." The evening started well enough. The conversation was light, mostly about work, with me chiming in with questions to show I was engaged. Mark seemed to relax, laughing at one of Chloe's witty observations about their boss. I felt a pang of pride. This was us, a team. I was helping him, supporting his career by being a gracious host. I was pouring Chloe a second glass of Sauvignon Blanc when it happened. She reached for the glass, her fingers wrapping around the stem. The light from the chandelier overhead caught the jewelry on her left hand, and my world tilted on its axis. On her ring finger was my ring. No, that couldn't be right. My mind scrambled, trying to find a logical explanation. It was a similar design, a popular style I hadn't been aware of. It was a trick of the light. I was tired. I was imagining things. I stared, my own glass frozen halfway to my lips. But the more I looked, the more the blood drained from my face. It wasn't similar, it was identical. The same twisting white gold vine, the same tiny diamond-dusted leaves, the same unique setting holding the central stone. Every impossible, one-of-a-kind detail that Mark had sketched on a napkin for me, a story he had spun about our unique love, was sitting on this other woman's hand. The hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounded like a jet engine in my ears. Mark and Chloe were still talking, their voices a muffled drone in the background. I couldn't breathe. My own ring suddenly felt heavy, cold, and foreign on my finger. It felt like a lie. I had to know. I had to break the spell of this waking nightmare. I slowly lowered my glass, my hand trembling slightly. I forced my lips into a smile, a tight, brittle thing that felt like it might crack my face in two. I looked from the ring on her hand to the ring on my own, holding my hand up just slightly for comparison. The silence stretched for a heartbeat too long. Mark finally noticed my expression, his smile faltering. I kept my voice impossibly calm, a detached curiosity that belied the screaming chaos in my soul. I looked directly at Chloe, but my question was for my husband. "I'm sorry, I can't help but notice your ring," I said, my voice as clear as a bell in the suddenly quiet room. I met Mark's eyes across the table, his face starting to pale. "It's beautiful. It's identical to mine." I paused, letting the weight of the word hang in the air between the three of us. "Mark, you told me you designed this just for me. You said it was the only one in the world." The air in the room turned thick and cold, sucking all the warmth from the rosemary chicken. Mark's face, which I had loved and studied for a decade, became a stranger's mask of panic. His mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish gasping for air. Chloe, on the other hand, merely raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her wine, her eyes sharp and calculating, fixed on me over the rim of the glass. The identical ring on her finger glinted like a weapon. "Honey, what?" Mark finally stammered, forcing a laugh that sounded like cracking ice. "Don't be silly, they're similar, that's all. It's a popular style, a classic vine motif." He was looking at me, but his eyes were pleading, begging me to accept the flimsy lie he was weaving out of thin air. I didn't break my gaze from his. "A popular style, Mark?" My voice was dangerously quiet. "Really? Do all the popular versions have exactly 3 tiny leaves clustered on the north side of the band? Do they all have this specific, almost invisible flaw in the gold twist right here, where the vine splits?" I held up my own hand, my finger trembling not with fear, but with a cold, rising fury. "Do they all have a secret sapphire on the inside? Go on, Chloe. Show us the inside of your ring. Show us the little blue secret Mark and I have." Chloe's polite smile tightened. She didn't move. It was Mark who flinched, as if I'd physically struck him. The color drained completely from his face. He knew he was caught. There was no secret sapphire in her ring, because he'd have had no reason to put one there. The lie was exposed, but Chloe, I was quickly learning, was made of steel. She placed her glass down with a soft click. "Mark, darling," she said, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness, "I think perhaps your wife is feeling a bit overwhelmed. It's been a long day for everyone." "Darling?" The word sliced through the tense air and stabbed me straight in the heart. It was casual, intimate, and possessive. It was a word that didn't belong in the mouth of a mere acquaintance. My entire body went rigid. The carefully constructed calm I'd been clinging to shattered into a million pieces. "Get out," I said. My voice was no longer quiet. It was a low growl that I barely recognized as my own. Mark shot up from his chair. "Honey, please, let's not do this. Chloe is my colleague. You're making her uncomfortable." "Am I, Mark?" I snapped, my eyes locking onto Chloe's. She was watching the exchange with a detached curiosity, like a scientist observing a chemical reaction. She wasn't uncomfortable. She was enjoying this. "I think she's been quite comfortable in our home. comfortable enough to wear a copy of my wedding ring, comfortable enough to call my husband darling. I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. I pointed a shaking finger toward the door. "Get out of my house now!" Chloe rose with an unhurried grace. She picked up her designer handbag, her movements fluid and deliberate. She wasn't fleeing. She was making a strategic retreat. Mark just stood there, paralyzed, a helpless spectator in the wreckage of his own making. As Chloe walked past me toward the front door, she leaned in close, her perfume, a heavy, musky scent, enveloping me. "He has excellent taste, doesn't he?" she whispered, the words a venomous caress against my ear. Then she was gone, the front door clicking shut behind her with an air of finality. The silence she left behind was deafening. I stood there, shaking, my arms wrapped around myself as if to hold my body together. The smell of the ruined dinner, of our perfect Tuesday night, was suddenly nauseating. I turned to face Mark. He looked utterly broken, his face pale and slick with sweat. "I can explain," he started, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I swear it's not what you think. I don't know where she got that ring. She's obsessed with me. She must have seen yours and had it copied. She's trying to drive a wedge between us." The lies were so frantic, so pathetic, they were almost insulting. Obsessed? A woman like Chloe? She was the predator, not the stalker. But I didn't have the energy to argue. A cold, hard certainty was settling in my gut. I needed proof. I needed something tangible to hold on to in this surreal nightmare. "I feel sick," I said, my voice flat and empty. I walked past him and went into our master bathroom, locking the door behind me. I listened as he paced back and forth in the bedroom, his footsteps frantic and uneven. I heard him pleading through the door, his voice cracking. I just sat on the cold tile floor, my mind racing. How? When? Why? Then a thought struck me, sharp and clear, a detail. Mark had bought my ring from a small, independent jeweler downtown, a lovely old man named Mr. Abernathy. Mark had been so proud of that. But Mr. Abernathy had retired over a year ago. He'd closed his shop and moved to Florida to be with his grandchildren. There was no way Chloe, a new colleague, could have gone to him to have the ring copied. So where did it come from? I waited until I heard the shower turn on. Mark trying to wash away his sweat and his lies. It was my chance. I slipped out of the bathroom and went straight to his study. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I knew where he kept the key to the small lockbox in his desk drawer, where he kept all his important documents and receipts. It was taped to the underside of his bookshelf. My fingers closed around the cold metal. With trembling hands, I unlocked the box. Inside was a mess of papers. Car titles, old tax returns, his passport. And there, tucked at the bottom, was the original dark blue velvet box from Mr. Abernathy's shop, the box that had held my ring, my universe. But lying right next to it was another box, identical. My breath hitched. I reached inside and pulled out a folded receipt tucked beneath it. It wasn't from Abernathy's, it was from a modern, high-end jeweler in the city. The date on it was from 6 months ago. My eyes scanned the itemized description, the words blurring through my tears. Replication of custom white gold diamond vine ring, based on client photos. But that wasn't the worst part. My gaze dropped to the bottom of the invoice. The Bill To section listed Mark's name and our home address, but the Ship To address was different. It was an apartment I'd never heard of, in a part of town we never went to. And below that, one final soul-destroying line item, a charge for a custom engraving. The inscription was quoted right there on the paper, "My forever C&M." My forever C&M. The words burned into my retinas, searing away the last 10 years of my life. Chloe and Mark. Not Mark and me. It wasn't a copy. It wasn't a stalker's imitation. It was a second edition. A newer, shinier version of a promise he had already made to me, now gifted to another woman. The sapphire on the inside of my ring, my secret, was suddenly a cruel joke. He hadn't bothered with secrets for Chloe. He had given her a public declaration, etched in gold. The receipt crumpled in my fist, the sharp edges digging into my palm. A sound escaped my throat, a choked, guttural sob that was part grief, part rage. The shower in the master bathroom shut off. The sudden silence was a klaxon horn, jolting me back to reality. I shoved the receipt and the second velvet box back into the lockbox, snapped it shut and slid it back into the drawer, just as I heard the bathroom door creak open. I scrambled to put the key back under the bookshelf, my movements clumsy and loud. "Honey, are you in here?" Mark's voice was tentative, laced with a desperate hope that I had calmed down. He appeared in the doorway of the study, wrapped in a towel, his hair still wet. He looked vulnerable, stripped of his earlier bravado. For a split second, he looked like my Mark again, the man I loved. Then the image of the receipt flashed behind my eyes, and the stranger was back. I trailed off, gesturing vaguely around the room. I couldn't look him in the eye. If I did, he would see the truth of what I knew reflected there. I needed some space. He took a hesitant step into the room. "Listen, Sarah, I was a coward. I should have told you about Chloe. She's unstable. She developed this fixation on me at work. The ring, I swear, she must have seen pictures on your social media and gone to some jeweler to have it made. It's creepy, I know. I was going to go to HR tomorrow. I just didn't want to worry you." The lies were more elaborate now, more detailed. He had used the time in the shower to build a better story, a stronger fortress of deceit. A part of me, the weak, heartbroken part, wanted to believe him. It would be so much easier to believe in a crazy colleague than a treacherous husband, but I had the receipt. I had the truth crumpled in my memory, the apartment address, the engraving, my forever C&M. I didn't challenge him. I just nodded numbly. "I'm tired, Mark. I think I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight." The hurt that flashed across his face was so genuine, so perfectly acted that it made my stomach churn. "No, Sarah, please," he begged, reaching for my hand. I pulled away as if his touch was fire. "Don't do this. Don't let her win. Don't let her do this to us." Us. The word was a mockery. There was no us anymore. There was me and there was C&M. I walked past him without another word, went into the guest room and locked the door. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, the silence of the house pressing in on me, and I planned. The rage and the grief had subsided, replaced by an icy, diamond-hard resolve. He wasn't going to get away with this. He wasn't going to paint me as the hysterical wife and Chloe, as the victim of a simple misunderstanding. I was going to burn his carefully constructed world to the ground. The next morning, I woke before he did. I made coffee just like I always did. I put on my work clothes. When he came into the kitchen, his eyes were red-rimmed and hopeful. He thought a night apart had cooled my anger. He thought we could talk, that he could smooth this over with more lies. "Morning," he said softly. "Can we talk before you go?" "I have an early meeting," I replied, my voice cool and even. I took the receipt I'd retrieved from his lockbox before dawn and folded it into a tiny square, slipping it into my pocket. It felt like a tiny, powerful weapon. "We can talk tonight." He looked relieved. He thought he had bought himself another day to reinforce his lies. But I wasn't interested in talking to him. I was interested in the address on that receipt. The apartment. Chloe's apartment. His and Chloe's apartment. I called in sick to work, my voice perfectly pitched to sound genuinely ill. Then I drove. The address was in a new, upscale part of the city, one of those sleek glass towers with a concierge in the lobby and a rooftop pool. It was a world away from our cozy little house in the suburbs. It was the life he was building with her. I sat in my car across the street for an hour, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. What was I even doing here? What did I hope to find? Around 9:30, a black town car pulled up. Mark stepped out. He wasn't in the rumpled suit he'd worn to the office. He was dressed in casual, expensive jeans and a soft cashmere sweater. He looked relaxed, happy. He looked like he was coming home. He scanned the street, then typed a code into the building's keypad. He disappeared inside. He had lied about going to the office. He had lied about going to HR. He had come straight here, to her, to their home. The rage was back, hot and blinding. I thought about storming in there, about confronting them both, about screaming until my lungs gave out. But what would that accomplish? They would just gaslight me, call me crazy, have security escort me out. No, I needed something more. I needed irrefutable proof, a truth so undeniable it would shatter his life as completely as he had shattered mine. My eyes fell on the concierge at the front desk, a young man idly scrolling on his phone. An idea, cold and audacious, began to form in my mind. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, and got out of the car. I walked across the street, my heels clicking purposefully on the pavement. I pushed open the heavy glass door, a bright, practiced smile fixed on my face. "Good morning," I said to the concierge, my voice warm and friendly. "I have a bit of a silly problem. I'm hoping you can help me." He looked up, a little surprised. "I can try, ma'am." "My husband, Mark, in 12B," I began, the words tasting like poison. "He just called me in an absolute panic. He's rushed off to an emergency meeting and thinks he left the oven on. I'm stuck in traffic across town, and he's asked if I could possibly call you and have you run up and check on it for him. He's so worried it's going to start a fire." I gave a little self-deprecating laugh. He can be so absent-minded. I would be eternally grateful. The concierge hesitated, his brow furrowing. I'm not really supposed to enter apartments without the resident present." I leaned in, my smile becoming more conspiratorial. "I know, and I wouldn't ask, but he's about to present to the CEO. He'll be a nervous wreck if he's worried about burning the building down." I pulled out my phone and quickly found a photo of Mark and me from our last vacation. Smiling, tanned, the picture of a happy couple. I showed it to him. "See? That's him, Mark Tanner, apartment 12B. The young man glanced at the photo, then back at me. My smile, my story, my sheer confidence seemed to win him over. "Okay," he said with a sigh. "Just this once. Let me grab the master key." My heart hammered against my chest as he disappeared into a back office. This was it. I was about to walk into their secret life. He returned a moment later, jangling a set of keys. He led me to the elevator and we rode up in silence. My mind was a blank slate. I had no idea what I would find, no idea what I was looking for. When the elevator doors opened onto the 12th floor, he led me down a pristine white hallway to apartment 12B. He slid the key into the lock, turned it, and pushed the door open. "Here you go," he said, holding the door for me. "Just be quick, okay?" I nodded, stepping across the threshold. The apartment was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and a stunning view of the city skyline. And there, on the sleek marble kitchen island, was a framed photo. It wasn't of Mark and me. It was a professional portrait of Mark and Chloe, their arms wrapped around each other, laughing. They were on a beach, the sun setting behind them. She was wearing a white dress, and on her finger, sparkling in the golden light, was her ring. My ring. His and her ring. And then I saw it. On the wall opposite the kitchen, a whole gallery of photos, them on a ski trip, them at a black tie gala, them kissing under the Eiffel Tower, a whole life I knew nothing about. My breath caught in my throat. Tucked amongst the photos was a framed certificate. I moved closer, my blood turning to ice as I read the elegant script. It was a marriage license, dated 1 year ago, issued by the city of Paris, France. A marriage license. The paper, protected by glass in a sleek silver frame, was a legal document, a binding contract. It was a testament to a life he was living entirely in, parallel to ours. Paris. He'd told me that trip was a solo corporate retreat, a week of intense networking and seminars. I'd packed his bags, making sure to tuck in his favorite cozy sweater for the chilly evenings. I'd even driven him to the airport at 4 a.m., kissing him goodbye, telling him to work hard but not too hard. The whole time, she was probably waiting for him at the gate. My husband, the man I'd been married to for a decade, had a second wife. He was a bigamist. The concierge cleared his throat from the doorway. "Ma'am, the oven?" My mind snapped back to the present, the lie I had told to get in here. "Oh, right, sorry, the view is just breathtaking." I walked into the kitchen on legs that felt like jelly. The oven was, of course, cold and dark. I fiddled with the knobs for a moment, pretending to check it. My eyes scanned the pristine, minimalist kitchen. Her kitchen. There was a high-end espresso machine on the counter, the kind Mark had always said was too extravagant for our budget. Next to it was a bowl of green apples perfectly arranged. It was all so sterile, so unlike our warm, cluttered, lived-in home. This was a showroom, a stage for a different life. I had to get out of there before I shattered something, before I screamed. I turned back to the concierge, forcing another brittle smile. "All clear. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. My husband will be so relieved." He nodded, clearly eager to get back to his desk. I walked out of the apartment, not daring to look back at the gallery wall of my husband's other marriage. As the door clicked shut behind me, I felt a profound, hollow emptiness. This wasn't just an affair. An affair is a betrayal, a secret. This was a complete second existence. He had 2 wives, 2 rings, 2 homes, 2 lives running concurrently, and he was the star of both. How had he managed it? The logistics alone were staggering. The lies, the constant vigilance, the sheer audacity of it all. Back in my car, I sat for a long time, the keys in my hand, unable to move. The shock was wearing off, and in its place, a white-hot crystalline rage began to form. This wasn't just about a broken heart anymore. This was a crime. He had committed fraud on an epic scale. He hadn't just lied to me. He had lied to the government of France. He had invalidated our entire life together with a single, illegal act. My 10-year anniversary, just 2 weeks away, was a sham. Our marriage was a lie. I started the car, my hand steady on the wheel. I knew what I had to do. Going to the police felt premature. I needed more. A marriage license from another country was damning, but I wanted to dismantle his life piece by piece, just as he had done to mine. I wanted him to see it all crumble before his eyes, and I knew exactly where to start. I drove not home, but to my office. I walked in, ignoring the concerned looks from my colleagues who thought I was sick. I went straight to my desk and logged into our shared bank accounts. My blood ran cold. For years, Mark had handled our finances. He was the numbers guy, an analyst at a prestigious firm. I trusted him completely. I'd never felt the need to scrutinize our statements. Now, looking at them with new eyes, the patterns were sickeningly clear. There were huge, regular cash withdrawals, thousands of dollars every month, labeled simply as cash. There were charges from high-end boutiques I'd never been to, restaurants in the city he'd claimed he was at for work dinners, airline tickets to Paris that lined up perfectly with his corporate retreat. And then I found it, a recurring monthly transfer, a 5-figure sum wired to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, an account that was not in his name. The transfer description was a single word: investment. He wasn't just funding his second life with our money, he was hiding it. He was building a nest egg, a golden parachute for when he decided to finally shed his old life. His life with me, and fly away with her for good. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when I cross-referenced the dates of the largest transfers. They aligned perfectly with the bonuses he'd received from his company. The bonuses he'd told me were smaller than expected, eaten up by taxes and a downturn in the market. He'd been systematically draining our shared future to build a new one with her. I took screenshots. I downloaded every statement for the past 3 years. I created a file on a secure thumb drive, a meticulous record of his financial treason. My next stop was a lawyer's office. I chose the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city, a woman known as the Shark. I laid out the photos of the marriage certificate, the bank statements, the receipt for the ring. Her eyes, usually cold and assessing, widened with something that looked almost like glee. "My dear," she said, leaning forward, a predatory smile on her face, "this isn't just a divorce. This is a detonation. He hasn't just committed bigamy, he's committed massive financial fraud against you. We're going to take everything." I left her office feeling strangely empowered. The plan was set. We would file for divorce on the morning of our 10th anniversary. We would freeze every asset. We would subpoena his company for his real bonus statements. We would expose his lies to everyone he knew. I spent the next 2 weeks living in a fog. I was a ghost in my own home. I played the part of the forgiving wife, pretending to believe his story about the unstable colleague. I let him think he was winning me back. I let him hold my hand. I even let him make love to me one last time. A cold, detached act where I imagined I was gathering forensic evidence. Every touch was a lie. Every kiss was a betrayal. He was planning our anniversary dinner at our favorite expensive restaurant. He spoke of it with excitement, as if it were a renewal of our vows, a fresh start after a small bump in the road. He had no idea he was planning his own execution. The morning of our anniversary arrived. I woke up beside him, his arm slung casually over my waist. For a moment, the ache in my chest was so profound I almost couldn't breathe. I mourned the man I thought he was, the life I thought we had. Then I slid out of bed, got dressed, and went to the kitchen. When he came downstairs, smiling, holding a small gift-wrapped box, I was ready. "Happy anniversary, my love," he said, his voice full of warmth. He held out the box. 10 perfect years. I didn't take it. Instead, I slid a thick manila envelope across the kitchen island toward him. "You should open yours first," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. He looked confused. He picked up the envelope, his name written on the front in my handwriting. He tore it open. His smile faltered as he pulled out the contents. The first thing he saw was a photograph, a crystal-clear 8E10 print of the French marriage license, enlarged so that his signature and Chloe's were impossible to miss. His face went ashen. He fumbled with the picture, and beneath it were the bank statements, with every fraudulent transfer, every cash withdrawal, every charge for her apartment's rent highlighted in bright yellow. "Sarah, what is this?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's your new life, Mark," I said calmly. "The one you've been hiding from me. Or is this my new life? The one without a bigamist and a thief in it? It gets so confusing when you're married to 2 people at once." I picked up my car keys from the counter. "By the way, I took the liberty of forwarding a copy of that marriage license to your HR department and to Chloe's. I believe your company has a rather strict ethics clause about that sort of thing. I also sent a copy to your mother. She always did love Paris." I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. He was just standing there, staring at the papers, his whole world imploding. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. "You can't," he choked out. "You'll ruin me." "You ruined us," I replied, my voice like ice. I opened the door. "Happy anniversary, Mark." But just as I was about to step out, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. I glanced down. My blood ran cold. The message contained a single photo, a picture of the front of my parents' quiet suburban house. Underneath it, a line of text that made my heart stop. "If you think you can ruin him without ruining everyone you love, you are very, very mistaken. We should talk." It was from Chloe. The world, which had just begun to feel solid under my feet again, dissolved into a terrifying, pixelated image of my parents' front porch. The familiar green rocking chairs, my mother's wind chimes, the welcome mat I'd given them for Christmas. Everything was exactly as it should be, which made the threat lurking behind the image 1,000 times worse. Chloe wasn't just a mistress. She wasn't just a second wife. She was a fighter, and she had just shown me she was willing to fight dirty. My carefully constructed plan, my righteous detonation, suddenly felt reckless. I had aimed my cannon at Mark, not realizing his other wife was standing right behind me with a knife to my family's back. Mark saw the color drain from my face. He saw the way I stared at my phone, and a flicker of something not relief, but a twisted kind of hope crossed his features. "Sarah, wait," he said, taking a step toward me. "We can fix this. Just don't do anything else." I held up a hand, silencing him. My mind was racing. Chloe's message was a masterstroke of psychological warfare. It wasn't a direct threat. It was an insinuation, a promise of collateral damage. She knew my parents were my weak spot. They were retired in their 70s with heart conditions and a quiet, peaceful life. The scandal of their son-in-law being a bigamist, a fraud, would be devastating enough. But Chloe's message hinted at something more sinister. I had no idea what she was capable of. "What does she want?" I said, my voice a strained whisper, directed at the shell of a man in my kitchen. He shook his head, looking genuinely bewildered. I don't know, she can be very determined." That was the understatement of the century. I ignored his pathetic response. I had to take control. I walked back into the house, closing the door behind me, and typed a reply to Chloe, my thumbs shaking. "Where and when?" The response was instantaneous. "The cafe on Bellevue, 1 hour, come alone." I spent that hour in a state of suspended panic. I called my lawyer, the Shark, and told her about the threat. She was furious. "This is witness intimidation, coercion. We can go to the police right now." "And say what?" I countered, pacing my living room. "That she sent me a picture of my parents' house? They'll tell me to file a restraining order, which is just a piece of paper. No, I have to meet her. I have to know what I'm up against." When I arrived at the cafe, Chloe was already there, sitting at a small table in the corner. She looked impossibly chic in a cream-colored trench coat, sipping an espresso, as if she were in the middle of a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. She hadn't brought a lawyer. She hadn't brought anyone. The confidence radiating from her was absolute. "Sarah," she said, her voice smooth and even as I sat down, "I'm glad you came. I was hoping you were intelligent enough to understand the situation." "Cut the crap, Chloe," I spat. "You threatened my family. What do you want?" She took another delicate sip of her coffee before answering. "What I want is for you to stop. You can divorce Mark. You can take the house, half his pension. I don't care about that, but you will not go to the authorities. You will not go to his company. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement, and you will walk away quietly. You will let him keep his job and his reputation." I stared at her, incredulous. "And why in the world would I do that? He's a criminal, and so are you. You're his accomplice." A small, cold smile played on her lips. "Mark is a fool. A charming, talented, but ultimately weak man who wants to have his cake and eat it too. I knew about you from the very beginning, Sarah. I knew about your cozy little house and your 10 years of comfortable, boring love. But you've misunderstood the dynamic. You think I'm the other woman. But in the world that matters, the world of money and power, you are." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Mark's job? That promotion he got 2 years ago that doubled your household income? That was me. My father sits on the board of his company. The Peterson account he was so stressed about? That's my family's business. Mark doesn't just work for his company. In a way, he works for me." The blood in my veins turned to ice. It all clicked into place. The expensive apartment, the offshore accounts, her utter lack of fear. She wasn't just a part of his secret life. She was the architect of it. "You see," she continued, "if you go to his company with this story, you won't just ruin Mark. You'll create a massive scandal for my family, and we don't like scandals. We have ways of making problems disappear. That picture I sent you, that was just a gentle reminder that we know where all your loved ones live. Your parents, your sister, and her children. It would be a shame if something unfortunate were to happen. A tragic random accident, a sudden unexplained financial ruin. Things happen. The threat was no longer veiled. It was stark, brutal, and utterly believable. This woman was from a world I couldn't comprehend, a world where people were just pawns to be moved or sacrificed. My righteous anger felt naive, childish. I was out of my depth. But as I looked at her smug, confident face, something inside me shifted. It wasn't courage. It was the cold, hard logic of a cornered animal. She was threatening my family to protect her family's reputation and money. She was protecting her asset, Mark, and that gave me an idea, a terrible, risky, but brilliant idea. I took a deep breath and changed my tactics completely. I let my shoulders slump. I let a tear trail down my cheek. "You're right," I whispered, my voice thick with manufactured defeat. I can't risk my family. What do you want me to do?" Chloe's posture relaxed. She had won. "You'll have your lawyer draw up a simple divorce settlement. No fault. You get the house, a standard alimony, and you'll sign the NDA my lawyers will provide. You'll do it today." I nodded numbly. "Okay." I walked out of that cafe, got in my car, and drove. But I didn't go to my lawyer. I went home. Mark was still there, sitting at the kitchen island, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal like a king on a broken throne. He looked up as I entered, his face a mask of desperation. "Sarah, Shut up, Mark," I said, my voice flat. "I just met with your other wife, the real one." I walked over to the coffee maker and started a new pot. My hands were perfectly steady. She made it very clear, I'm to divorce you quietly, sign an NDA, and let you keep your career, which, it turns out, she owns, all to avoid a scandal for her powerful family. He visibly sagged with relief. "She can be very persuasive." "Oh, she was," I said, pouring myself a coffee. "But here's the thing, Mark. You've been living two lives, trying to keep two women happy. And that's about to end, because right now, you have a choice to make." I took a sip of the hot coffee, meeting his confused gaze over the rim of the mug. Option A, I do exactly what Chloe says. I sign the NDA, I take the house, and I disappear. You get to keep your job, your reputation, and your life with her. You lose me, but let's be honest, you lost me a long time ago. Or option B. I set the mug down with a sharp click. In option B, I take every piece of evidence I have, the marriage license, the bank statements, the receipt for the ring, and I walk into the biggest, sleaziest tabloid newspaper in this city. I won't go to the police or your company. I'll go to the press. I will give them the story of the decade. The cheating, bigamist husband, the powerful heiress, the scorned wife. I will plaster your face and her father's face all over the front page. There will be no quiet disappearance. It will be the messiest, most public, most humiliating scandal imaginable. It will destroy your career, yes, but more importantly, it will destroy her family's precious reputation. She may have money and power, but even she can't stop a media firestorm once it starts. Mark stared at me, his mouth agape. He understood immediately. I had found Chloe's one weakness, her pride. A police investigation could be buried, an HR complaint could be managed, but a public spectacle? A tabloid feeding frenzy? That was a different kind of weapon. "You wouldn't," he breathed. "She threatened my parents, Mark," I said, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. "Try me. So what's it going to be? You're going to call her right now and you're going to tell her that the deal has changed. I'm not signing an NDA. I'm not taking a standard settlement. You are going to liquidate every single asset that is in your name, including that offshore account. You will give me 75%. You will keep 25%, enough to start over somewhere else. You will resign from your job effective immediately. You and Chloe will disappear. If I ever see or hear from either of you again, the story goes public. You have 1 hour to make the call." He looked from me to his phone, his face a mess of terror and disbelief. He saw the unwavering resolve in my eyes. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He had created 2 lives, and now he was caught in the crossfire between 2 wives he had underestimated. He picked up his phone. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my house, free and clear signing the final divorce papers. Mark was gone. He'd resigned, citing personal reasons. The money, a life-changing sum, was in my account. Chloe had backed down. The threat of public humiliation was a price her family was not willing to pay. My victory didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet and clean, like disinfecting a wound. I had lost the love of my life, but I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. I picked up my wedding ring from the counter, the one that was supposed to be unique. I didn't feel sadness, just a faint sense of pity for the woman I used to be. I walked outside to the trash can, opened the lid, and let the ring fall into the darkness, its tiny leaves and twisted vines disappearing among the coffee grounds and remnants of a life I was finally leaving behind. It was the scent of a new beginning, and it smelled like freedom.